So Bastian, thanks for coming on. It's great to see you again. We know each other a little bit from the industry and just always love talking to you. So thanks for coming on kind of this, we'll call it emergency podcast. I know you had a lot of takes on this topic. It's a kind of a big deal in the cycling industry, what's happening with VanMoof. It's really unfortunate, but I think, we wanted to get together. We talked over LinkedIn and we wanted to talk about kind of what is happening because this is sort of a big, VanMoof was really kind of upending the e-bike business, and they had kind of, I don't know, they just kind of had, their model was really unique, really innovative. Unfortunately, it hasn't been sustainable, but I wanted to just dive into it and see kind of your thoughts on it since you are really into this. So I don't know, but maybe we can just start off and you can tell me about what you think about the situation. Maybe we can go back a little bit and kind of fill people in about where VanMoof started and what they've been doing over the last few years.
Yeah. So I've been following VanMoof since the very beginning. You have to keep in mind it started as a regular bicycle brand around about 15 years ago. They had a very unique frame design with the continuous top tube, including the front and back lights in the top tube. Outstanding design language. They used to go or work with regular distributors and retailers, and it was a regular bike brand, and they were doing really, really well. Back at the time, they used standardized components. It was mainly the frame and design language of the frame that was so unique, and they were doing really, really well.
And VanMoof is a Dutch brand, right?
Exactly. It's a Dutch brand. It's
two brothers.
Pardon?
Two brothers founded it.
Exactly. Two brothers founded it. I don't know if both, but one of them for sure with a very strong design background. And yeah, I've been following since the start in the late 2000s. I think it was 2007 or 8 where they really started. Not 100% sure, but they have been around for quite some time. What happened on a product level is when they stepped into the e-bike segment, they built more and more proprietary parts, which means they were trying to verticalize the whole product approach. So everything was designed by them, each and every component, not only the static components, they also worked with suppliers for the motors, batteries, controllers, and so on. They always said, like, we need to do that to create a unique customer experience. They had some good features like the lock function, automatic shifting. So on paper, everything was great. But
right,
during the process,
because they wanted to have a really unique e-bike experience. I mean, why did they do that? Why do you think that they needed to do proprietary, all proprietary?
They said, like, to be really honest, I addressed my concerns with their general product approach with one of the founders, and he simply, like, that was like around about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And he told me, yeah, he wants to have that unique customer experience. It has to be an outstanding design, but also on a usability level. He simply wanted to step up the game and be a true innovator.
So proprietary parts for him didn't meet the standard for what he wanted to design and what he wanted to realize in terms of product.
Exactly. That was one of the reasons. And the second reason was he said that it's cheaper to produce it on their own. What you have to keep in mind with proprietary parts, if you verticalize, then you have the full control. You own all the margins. You own the margins not only for the bikes, but also for the spare parts.
So he was recovering the margin on all those parts that he would have otherwise had to pay for and pay upcharge to the manufacturers.
Yeah, or along the value chain, everybody is earning a tiny bit, you know,
of course.
if you go direct. But that he never told me that was the reason.
Right, but that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense.
He stated that it's cheaper if he produces everything himself. So it was not that he wanted to make more margins. I think he wanted to offer the final product
more value,
a better price point to have
more value. Makes sense.
Target group. So yeah, but that's it. What happened over the years on a product level, that the share of proprietary parts was growing and growing and growing. And they were a very customer-centric thinking brand, like they said, but just on the usability level and on a brand communication level until launch. They totally forgot, and that's the biggest issue and failure, in my opinion, of VanMoof. They forgot how they can get their bikes serviced in the markets that they served.
So let's stop for a second. So they had, I think they had like 5 or 6 models that were all e-bikes, and the innovative part of that was like, you look at them and they don't look like e-bikes.
Yes.
They don't. Like the battery's integrated, the motor's really small, and they just look like elegant commuter bikes. And so what they did was they moved towards a D2C with a lot of service-oriented offerings, right? Because I see that they have different service-oriented offerings like theft protection, maintenance up to 3 years, all based on subscription basis. So they've got this kind of recurring revenue model. And it sounds to me like then they started taking on a lot of startup funding, right?
Yeah. The main thing is they created these programs because they already had issues, and it was often how could you say, like a burden for the end consumer to decide to buy it, not being sure.
Oh, if it was okay, how to service it.
And they called it a peace of mind offering.
Okay.
For a reason, but it wasn't peace of mind, because what happened that people who subscribed these services, if they had a flat tire, they were shipping bikes through Europe.
Really?
Complete bikes.
Wow.
What should you do if you don't have a local service provider being able, where the customer sits, to get this service done locally? You ship full bikes.
The VanMoof, the whole bike.
Yes.
Wow. So if you had,
of course, you can tell the customer how to do it, and if you can't go, I mean, changing a tire is a bad example, because there you always find a local bike shop who can.
Sure, of course.
If the rest is proprietary. Right.
But if you're having a problem with the motor, if the motor has a problem, you have to ship the whole bike. Yeah.
We have to make a short break. Give me a second.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I can pause it.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like we can get into that. I just wanted to understand. So they had this design forward, really nice design forward products that then kind of became then they began with producing their own e-bikes. And when did do you know when they started taking funding at some point, right?
Yeah, they needed to, but the main thing is they needed funding for the product development, for the production, for the service aspect, but mainly to get their product sold, because the customer acquisition costs in a D2C model with such a wide audience were freaking huge.
Yeah,
they had huge marketing costs.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Valentin, darf ich die Call machen, bitte? Hm? Nein, Valentin, heute nicht. Das hatten wir ausgemacht, ja? So, sorry.
So they had, let's talk about this. So they had a D2C model, which in terms of like direct consumer concept, they have high acquisition costs, ads, Facebook ads, Google ads, which has a certain amount of upfront capital that they're going to have to bring. So they sort of switched to a real kind of pure startup mentality. And so they started bringing on seed capital or funding. I don't know what series they were at, but I think as of today, they had raised 190 million euros is what I saw.
Yeah. Close to 200.
Close to 200 million euros. So they're bringing on funding. So it feels to me like they started getting this wave of exuberance that was happening in the startup world as well into the bike world.
You could see like they obviously had consultants out of the tech and consumer electronics industry.
Sure.
And they were using their slides that they have been using all the time. But you can't apply these strategies to
the bike
the
industry.
supermarket.
And this is where sort of the problems began, it sounds like. So they had maybe they had sustainable acquisition costs, but where probably the wheels came off, at least this is what I saw in your specific analysis, which really got made me kind of curious, was that the maintenance and the service model just did not hold water.
Yeah, the main thing is they have been pushing. They had great sales. One thing I want to point out, they have not been the very first ones making that sleek looking e-bikes where you couldn't see that it's an e-bike. There had been other players around that time that did a almost as good job on a product design and sleekness level, let's put it that way. But these were bootstrapped. They never got the attention in the mass market like VanMoof because they were pushing hard on a marketing perspective. And that's the reason they needed to grow. No question asked. But the main thing, not one customer was able to give VanMoof a freaking call. There is only chatbots and email. So the chatbot is basically useless. If VanMoof had a flagship store in your city, so what VanMoof also did, like if you have a look at the last 2 years, first, like 2 years ago, they said like we are building up a huge flagship store network. I think they were saying like 50, don't get me wrong, I'm not 100% sure, but I think 2 years ago they announced that they will build 50 local flagship stores within 1 year. Exactly 1 year later, they said, hey, now we're doing retail co-ops to even make a bigger coverage of the markets they serve. Don't get me wrong, they knew exactly where most of their customers were located. So if they opened single service destinations in the key metropolitan areas where most of their customers were located, that did work in general. But they sold their bikes all over the place.
All over Europe. Okay, so if they would have stayed in a more compact geographic area, it might have been more sustainable. But you're saying that this shipping back and forth must have been, and the servicing of the proprietary ports without a service partner was kind of where they started hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, I got really interested to see what has been happening like a year ago, and I've been reading it also since then. Is just go on Trustpilot and read these comments of these reviews. The related Reddit threads, it's a freaking nightmare. You get so many insights what's going wrong. Of course, the customers being not happy are the ones that are shouting out loudest. There for sure have been happy VanMoof customers, don't get me wrong.
No, I mean, I look at this brand from the surface and I'm like, they mismanaged it, but this model is going to continue, whether it's other brands, but this is a good model. I mean, I personally would like to have a nice looking e-bike without the big down tube, and everything to drive around the city. I would love one. I just haven't found one yet. And I think that's where the market is going. So, I mean, they weren't wrong at all. But like you said, if there were so it sounds like from you, just from being in the industry, noticing this, you having a lot of experience in the industry and understanding distribution, understanding how service works, that it just caught your eye and you were like, something is wrong here.
Exactly.
So
the main thing is I'm not a great sustainable living guy, but sustainability is getting more and more important. VanMoof claimed to be the player to get people in urban areas to use a more sustainable mode of transportation. That was their main claim.
Which is a great message. Which is a great message.
TV adverts that they did, where they really claimed like basically don't use cars, they're bad for the environment, go get a fancy e-bike. Great, like they did TV commercials. Which other brand does TV commercials? It's all good. But at the same time, they are shipping complete bikes forth and back across Europe complete bikes, sometimes with some users, if you have a look on Trustpilot, like up to 4 times a year.
To
That's
one
not
customer.
sustainable.
Right.
That's a freaking nightmare.
Right.
And
well,
on a handling level,
here's the EBITDA versus the net sales numbers from throughout the year. So you can see, and this is what must have been what you saw, where you were just like, whoa, wait a second here.
And these numbers from 2021 were only published really, really late. I think beginning of this year. I made a related post and said like, fuck guys, it's going wrong. Also the sheet or the slide you show right now, that's one source I found only this week. It was also already from May this year, but I was doing some research, especially for VanMoof and Cowboy. And so this one popped up. Nobody knows the numbers from 2022.
Right.
But they will be at least equally bad, in my opinion. Nobody knows. They've never been made public. But yeah, it basically, when they published the 2021 numbers, it was clear that it won't work. That they were basically
that they were dead on arrival, in a sense that it wasn't sustainable. And so basically at that point, they all kind of knew that. I'm sure internally they knew that. And then that was when, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a week ago, that they began suspending sales. That was kind of the first, was that the first sign of real trouble that you saw?
When they suspended sales, it was obvious that it's done. First, I was like, okay, they're suspending sales. So there's 2 options. Either now they really want to get their customer relations back to 0, let's put it that way, because they had so many orders in that they didn't deliver yet, but the people had paid already. And also on a service level, they were so behind with servicing the brands that I thought, okay, it's a good idea to not sell any bikes anymore because they can't keep up. They have to make a break. That was my first thinking. And then I was like, fuck, no, like, I think they're basically done. Because even if they stop, if they stop selling, they need freaking money. They have been living from that money that they got without shipping the bikes for quite some months now.
So they haven't been shipping for a while. Like there were delays on the shipping, you're saying? Before they stopped?
Have a look on Trustpilot, Reddit, and so on. There are always several months of delay between payment and shipping the bikes.
Okay, but that wasn't that unusual. I mean, like Canyon and other brands, like they have shipments coming in from Taiwan or from wherever they produce. So that was could have been
until 3rd quarter, 4th quarter last year. Yes. But the whole supply chain is back to normal, basically, since this year. So the COVID has impacts, yes. So if you talk about last year, all good. Also tiny bit of delays. What you hear out of the other brands, yes, shipments were late. Everybody was very often between 1 to 6 months late during the last 3 years. But we are basically back to normal, more or less, tiny bit of delays. And what you have to keep in mind, they freaking built own factories or bought factories. So in Taiwan, they had an own factory. So they had control, at least, of parts of the supply chain. But the issue was more the ones, like everybody's using the same suppliers in the bicycle industry, we have to be honest. The suppliers they use, the suppliers normally have their catalog of products. Sometimes there is some labeling, and that's it. But they sell always the same product. With VanMoof, these guys or the suppliers had to make custom products. So if you are now in a situation during COVID where you are totally flat out as a supplier, you can't produce as many parts as are requested from the market. You as a supplier, where do you focus on? Do you focus on your catalog products that you can sell to everybody? Or do you focus on the products of that one client who wants to do everything custom? So that was a big issue, in my opinion. I never talked to any of the suppliers, but it's just a logical thinking and what I would do as a supplier. I think that the COVID situation was really, really difficult for them. And maybe it took longer for them to recover than the rest of the industry. But still, on a revenue level, like they got the money for the bikes.
Sure, they were selling.
They shipped it later. When they stopped selling, this meant a break in incoming payments, while still being at the fucking edge already. I mean, the last founding round or getting capital in was early this year. So and it wasn't that much. I can't remember how much it was, but yeah.
So, okay, so they were able to, just kind of recapping, so they were able to catch the wave of COVID naturally. They had some very good design sensibility. There is a move towards mobility, which is kind of macroeconomic factors that are happening. And the verticalization, probably to keep up with the goals that they had from their backers and from the investors, was that they started shipping all over Europe. And so shipping all over Europe was probably a net negative, a big net negative once they, once you had to have a couple service interventions. So at this point, they stopped shipping. This was 2 weeks ago. And then you find out, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 days ago, that they went to bankruptcy court.
Exactly. 6 days ago.
And now
Friday last week.
Yep. And now the company is actually in administration. So the founders are out in terms of control, and an administrator has come in and is deciding what is going to happen with their creditors and with the company itself. We don't know. I don't know how much you know, but this is still kind of developing. So this is all kind of happening right now. But probably what will happen is the administrators will come in. What do you think is going to happen now?
Nothing. The brand, in my opinion, is simply that. That's it. The customers are fucked. Let's see if there is any chance. Like you saw what Cowboy did, creating an app. He was not the only one. So at least trying to enable VanMoof riders to still ride their bicycle on the software perspective.
Can you explain that to people that don't understand maybe how that works?
So the VanMoof is a very connected bike. The app is the central instrument. And if the app doesn't work, if the servers are down for the app, you can't use your bike anymore. You can't unlock it. Basically, the unlock mechanism was one of the key features.
So
without the app, you can't use your bike. And the users got very nervous end of last week, because they thought, like, if they stopped the app support, shut down the servers, they knew they would be fucked. So that's the reason why some developers jumped in. Cowboy used it as a marketing thing, using their internal resources to create a quick app within 1 day. So big respect to them. They don't cover all of the models yet. They don't cover all of the operating systems yet, but they are on it, and that one is a check mark for me. On the software perspective, I'm not worried that you won't be able to ride VanMoof bikes in the future. The main thing is you won't get any fucking spare parts apart from tires, rims, spokes, nipples, and maybe pedals. And you can also put another saddle and
handlebar.
But that's it. Like, all the other parts are proprietary. The cockpit is proprietary, the brakes are proprietary, the battery, the motor, the controller, everything is proprietary. Nobody else is using these parts in the market. So we don't know, but I had one comment on a related LinkedIn post, a guy from Taiwan who gave some insights for the situation of VanMoof with its suppliers, stating, no idea if that's right, but that the supplier relationships are a freaking nightmare. And he said that he knows of one of the suppliers, if VanMoof now goes bankrupt, will have a double-digit million impact of products he has on stock and can't use for anybody else. He can't sell these products, which means at the same time that that's one supplier where VanMoof has big outstanding payments to do. And this is probably what happened in the past. Like if you work with especially Taiwanese suppliers, it's really a partnership. Like it's understanding by each other. I think the suppliers got very sensitive concerning VanMoof within the last months and simply were really pushing on the payment terms. And from one point only ship stuff when it was paid, or at least a big share. That's just a suggestion. But an idea. I think there is some issues. I was asked, hey, yeah, VanMoof, such a great brand, so strong. The brand alone must be worth a lot. There will be another player, any big omni-channel player who simply takes over the brand and will be able to run it via their existing service and retailer network. In my opinion, no. Nobody will
explain that because it's so kind of toxic the way that they set it up. So it's like you could only sell to a small network. You'd have to stock these parts. You'd have to set up a service network with all these proprietary parts and stock them and finance them. So you're just saying that it might actually be totally unsustainable where all these bikes just go into a landfill.
No. One thing, the bikes were too cheap. They would have to ask for more money, otherwise they wouldn't be in that situation. But that was based on a direct-to-consumer business model. If they want to turn omni-channel and also want to, like a big player, omni-channel player, buys VanMoof, is also selling it to its retailers, the retailers have to have a margin as well. Because the retailers don't want to stock a brand and have all that learning curve, because the retailers have to educate their staff how to service and repair these bikes. If a retailers normally only sell e-bikes that have e-ingredient brands built in, like e-ingredient brands are Bosch, Rose, Mahle, Shimano, Fazua, in future Porsche, motors, batteries, controller, user interface combos, where the retailer and its mechanical stuff is educated by these e-ingredient brands how to service and maintain these products.
One has support.
So
it has support.
Huge or put a huge effort during the last years into educating the retailer and the staff how to service their bikes.
Totally.
And whoever takes over a totally proprietary approach from VanMoof has to do the same for all of his retailers. They have to show them how to service these bikes. And I just got some quotes from product designers who said, like, yeah, I took my VanMoof, I pulled it into parts just to see how it works. And fuck, it was a total nightmare. No idea how they thought this will happen, would work well on a product level. I never put any VanMoof into parts. It's just
this was
on the internet, so don't take it.
This is anecdotes. Yeah, no,
it was product designers.
Right.
And
so let me ask you this. So I've got this graph here, and it shows the current state of private funded e-mobility D2C brands. Yeah. Can you tell me what you and this is from a LinkedIn post. Can you tell me what you see here and what you think is going to happen, not only with VanMoof but with these other brands?
I know Augustin a bit. He's doing a great job. He's coming from the big micromobility bubble, let's put it. He's not only doing cycling, but micromobility overall. To be really honest, let's start at right. Cake is, yes, a direct-to-consumer brand, but he also has an omni-channel approach. He's working a lot with pop-up stores, but also retail partnerships, and for certain markets owned also with distributors. So it's not a total D2C approach by Cake.
So the fifth most funded private mobility brand is Cake at 70, looks like 74 million euro or dollars. Then we've got Cowboy, which you mentioned earlier, is a German brand, right?
No, Belgium.
Belgian brand that has $131 million in funding, and it seems to be relatively healthy. They also are picking up the slack in terms of the app interoperability with the VanMoof bikes. As we know, VanMoof at 190 million is bankrupt. We've got then Rad. Rad, what is this called? Rad. This is an American brand.
Rad Power Bikes.
Rad Power Bikes.
Rad Bikes.
Rad Bikes.
So Cowboy second. So first, one more time to Cake. Cake isn't e-bike manufacturer considering pedelecs. Like their main business is e-motorbikes. They started with a motocross enduro kind of machine as a flagship product, but they're mainly doing e-motorbikes. They built a very, very strong brand. The guy who founded it, Stefan, is a fucking genius in my opinion. He's also the former founder of POC, the protection brand,
the Swedish protection brand,
cycling, skiing, and so on. Fun fact, POC means piece of cake. So this guy obviously already had the idea for Cake when he founded POC. So this is a very strategic thinker. And I'm 100% sure that he will be very, very successful with Cake in the future.
Cool.
100%. So this one is a check mark. They do everything right, in my opinion. Cowboy started later than VanMoof, went straight into e-bikes. VanMoof started with regular bikes. Cowboy is doing a lot like VanMoof. It really always felt like they are really looking up to them, what they do, and try to tweak their approaches. But the difference for Cowboy is mainly two things. They didn't push products too early in the market and fuck up, basically. They really tested the products. They really didn't, they only brought products into the market when they really worked, which means the warranty rate and the customer satisfaction in general at VanMoof is way higher. At Cowboy is way higher than at VanMoof. They have been pushing on a retail partnership and service network perspective for quite some time. They're not there yet, but they have less product issues. They have way less product issues. Still, the biggest challenge for them is also the combination of right now D2C and proprietary parts mainly. Not only, but mainly. They really stepped up the game, and that's one mistake I would say, that they also increased the share of proprietary parts on their bikes. But in general, at least these bikes work. The customers are happy, and they are working on a retail partnership program. So Cowboy has definitely a good chance to keep on going, and it will be fun. VanMoof, we discussed, in my opinion, it's done. I don't see, like, in Bike Europe, one of the biggest, or the biggest European bicycle industry B2B magazine had an article recently where they stated in the last blog that, by the way, neither Excel nor PON, both being from Netherlands as well, by the way, one of the biggest player, or PON being the biggest bicycle player by revenue on a global scale, they have not been interested in VanMoof in the past. And they also weren't interested, or they referred it to the last founding round early this year. At the same time, PON would have been a player who could have bought VanMoof, but they bought Veloretti, a brand that is doing a lot like VanMoof and Cowboy, in Q3 last year. So they have this product approach and that product category covered. I don't think that they will... is it noisy in the background? Can you hear that?
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
Sounds fine.
Give me a second.
The perils of emergency podcasts.
Ja, Schätzlein, was brauchst du irgendwas? Palently. Brauchst du irgendwas? Ja, aber Palently. Du kannst auch bei mir irgendwie spielen, aber du musst es nicht neu machen, ja? Du wolltest eine Schulung. Sorry. So back to the thing. VanMoof is difficult because like Bike Europe, the biggest European bicycle industry B2B magazine, stated in an article recently that neither PON nor Excel, the two biggest players in the Netherlands, PON being the biggest player in the bicycle industry on revenue level on a global scale. Both of them have not been interested in VanMoof in the past. They referred to the last founding round early this year. Both of them would have been players where it would have made sense to buy VanMoof if they then tweaked the product approach, but they definitely have the retail and service network to cover all the relevant markets and the customers, the existing customers of VanMoof. That being said, PON bought Veloretti, a bicycle brand that is doing a lot like Cowboy and VanMoof on a product level, so they have this product category covered. Talking about potential buyers of VanMoof, I think the only chance is that players out of other industries step in. So either automotive or consumer electronics. So the last post, which got a reach on LinkedIn, I think around 100,000. The most readers from the latest article that was very criticizing VanMoof and where I was pointing out what I think were the main reasons why they failed was Tesla and Amazon, the most reads by employees by company. So that gives a hint. Let's put it that way. I think automotive brands could take over. They are used to proprietary parts and servicing proprietary parts products anyway. But their retail network isn't built or service network isn't built yet for the bike category. Not yet. That will happen long term, but they wouldn't be there yet.
So yeah, this is a developing story. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this was great that we got to sit down. I think, it's been especially interesting from a business standpoint. This podcast is built around those aspects. And I think this was like a perfect kind of, just kind of an analysis on, what works and maybe what doesn't. So I really appreciate you, Bastian, jumping on today. And talking with me, and we'll keep an eye on this. But Bastian, where can people find you? Because I know you are big on LinkedIn, I know, and so people can just find you on LinkedIn. You're often writing not only about this but also about all kinds of other things. That's kind of how we got to know each other, because I had kind of been following you, and you're always bringing up really good points. So hopefully in the future we can do another, maybe jump on again and dig into something else, because this was really fun, and unfortunate for the situation, very unfortunate for the people that work at VanMoof, but I really appreciate.
That's one thing I want to point out. I was very negative and very straight. What these guys behind the brand VanMoof built, some of them spent their adult lifetime building this brand, and it's a freaking pity to see the brand in that situation. But it was, to be honest, it was foreseeable, and they didn't listen to their customers. I think that's the biggest problem. Or I felt like the investor relations management was more important than the customer relations, and that's the biggest mistake you can do as a brand or as a company or a founder. The customer is always the most important, and they did a great job, but they thought very design centric and feature centric, and they didn't think until the very end of the customer journey, the service part and the servicing part, and that's what broke their neck, basically.
That's the soundbite right there. That's the soundbite. That was really good. Yeah, because it does show their lack of understanding of the bicycle market.
The fun fact is, these guys know the bicycle market because they started with regular bikes and a classic distributor and retailer approach 15 years ago. They just shifted to direct to consumer. But they had the experience with the non-e-bike that still had a shitload of standardized parts, was really, really easy to service, either do it yourself or any retailer, local bike shop around the corner, let's put it that way. And they saw it with the e-bikes, it worked as well. But at the same time, they pumped up the share of components being 100%
for the
margin,
purely for margin.
No, not for margin, really. They did it because they wanted the greatest or the best customer experience using the bike. That was really their main aim. They had great features. They had unique features. It's just like they didn't think it to the end, what they do if anything has a bug or doesn't work, and how they get their bike serviced in the markets that they serve.
Well, and
that's one thing that they pushed away until it got so difficult that it basically fucked the whole business model.
Well, and probably I've worked with some tech startups, and when you're in a startup, you are at the mercy of the investors, and it does become sort of a downward spiral where you have to continue to grow. And what probably happened here is they got the tiger by the tail, and they just couldn't pull back, and they got to the point of no return, and that's probably where we're at right now.
You have to deliver, but that's the main thing. It's tech industries. It's not scalable like any software tech companies.
Right. Software is bits. It's not atoms. It's not atoms that you have to go and
it's a very special market, because what you always keep in mind, I talked about products being able to be serviced by classic retailers, even if you are a D2C brand. So using e-ingredient brands like Bosch, Brose, Mahle, Fazua, Shimano, you name it, at least gives you a chance as a customer to get your direct-to-consumer bike serviced at a regular retailer. But it's only a chance. There are many, many customers of direct-to-consumer brands that go to the local retailer. They have been buying bicycles from these retailers for decades. Then they buy one time a direct-to-consumer bike, and then the retailer says, sorry, don't service direct-to-consumer bikes. I know it's a
rightly so.
It could help you, but
so.
Next time buy a bicycle from me, and then you will get full service.
Right.
And depending on the markets, it's very difficult. In Germany, for example, the share of retailers rejecting direct-to-consumer brand bikes for services is quite high. So even if it stays a challenge. But if you use proprietary parts only, so with a VanMoof, going to any retailer, more quickly chance that he lets you in with that bike. Because
he can't, because he doesn't know.
He has to store it at least one day, probably more days. He has to order the parts only from VanMoof. He cannot use any spare parts that he has in the store. And his staff doesn't know how to repair that stuff.
Sure.
It's
well, thank you, Bastian. This was really fun. It was great seeing you, and I'm gonna stop now.
Perfect. Thank you so much.